inaugural industrial conclave. Today we are joined by Mr. Ashutosh Garg. Ashutosh sir has had a very interesting professional journey, from being the managing director at a top MNC to quitting the plum corporate job for a startup to eventually writing books. Ashutosh sir, an MBA from Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai, has worked in the corporate sector for 25 years. He worked for ITC Limited for 17 years, leaving in 1995 as the managing director of one of the ITC group companies based in Singapore. In 2013, he took the plunge towards entrepreneurship and started a chain of health retail outlets under the name Guardian. Guardian is now the leading wellness retailer in India. In 1995, he was recognized as a global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum, Switzerland. He has written highly acclaimed books such as The Buck Stops Here, Learnings of a Startup Entrepreneur, The Corner Office, Reboot, Reinvent, Rewire, Managing Retirement in the 21st Century, An Eye for an Eye, The Brand Called You, What's Next for You, and his latest book published this year itself, Indra, The Saga of Purandar. Thank you for joining us today, Ashutosh sir. It is our pleasure to host you. I would like to invite you to take it over from here.
Okay. Thank you, Vanya. Thank you, Professor Kapoor. And I see Professor Murthy, who's an old friend from IIM Rohtak. So thank you, Professor Murthy, for inviting me. It's always good to catch up with old friends. So I'm delighted to be with all of you at IIT Jodhpur. What I will talk a little bit about is personal branding and how important it is in the post-pandemic world, given the new world order that is going to emerge even when we get a vaccine. I have served on the board of Gavi, which is the world's vaccine body, for 8 years, and therefore I have some understanding of when the vaccine will actually be present and when it will actually be available to common people like all of us in this conference. So I'm going to talk a little bit about personal branding. I've got a small presentation. Professor Kapoor had said I should have 7-8 slides, so I'll just quickly talk about that. And then I leave it open, ask me questions, as many questions as you can, and feel free to ask me on any subject. Like all of you doing your MBA, I did my MBA all of 42 years ago from Jamnalal Bajaj. So therefore, that's a long time ago, but it is still an MBA program that I know, and I know the kind of stresses that you will be going through. So let me just put my, 1 minute, I need a window. Oh, I think I should give me a minute. I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with Google. I always use Zoom. So I go to a window. I'm just trying to figure out, give me 1 second. I go to present now and a tab.
Present now, so there'll be 3 options. You select your entire screen, and then there's a pop-up. You just click on the screen which you're seeing in front of you, and then the share button will get highlighted.
Okay, but I don't see my presentation anywhere. I have that open on my computer.
Sir, if you minimize the presentation, then you won't get the option of presenting.
Sorry?
Sir, please don't minimize the presentation.
Oh, I don't minimize it. Okay.
Yeah.
But then how do I go back? Okay. See, these are little skills that all you young people have, which I don't have. No, I still don't see it. I haven't minimized it, but then how do I share it?
So when you click on present now, so you can select either of the options, your entire screen or a window, and then you'll get the option.
So I say entire screen, but I keep getting the same screen.
Yes, sir, you have to click on that first, and then the share button will appear.
No.
Yes, sir, it's visible now.
Yes, sir, we can see it now.
But can you see my presentation? I can't see it.
No, not yet, sir.
So the presentation is not yet on.
So my presentation is open. I'm sorry, I'm being a little obtuse about this, but
it's okay, Mr. Garg, no problem. Nothing to worry about it. It might take a couple of minutes. Nothing to worry.
so should I just
Yeah.
then just talk about it without presenting it? If I'm not able to show you the
Sir?
screen, I'll just talk about it then.
So you can
Absolutely.
do that, or you can also try sharing the entire screen. If you share the entire screen, maybe then the presentation will be visible.
You can just stop presenting for now. Click on the stop presenting. Share the entire screen. That's about
Stop
it.
presenting. Oh man. And then entire screen. But when I get the entire screen, I only get the same screen that I'm seeing here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You need to click on that.
Like that. I say share.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's it.
And you can see it now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Very
You
much.
can see it.
But the presentation is still not there, no?
So you can open your presentation and it will be visible to us.
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir. We can see it now.
Okay. Okay, Greg. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I've lost 3-4 minutes this time to figure this one out.
Not at all.
So, what I thought I'll talk to you about today was rebranding oneself. Let me quickly, I'll take 2-3 minutes and talk about my own self. So, about a year and a half ago, I was invited to speak at a conference of 3,000 HR leaders from around the world. And after 4 decades, when I was walking up to be introduced, the introducer actually put me on the spot and said that, can you introduce yourself in 5 words? And that was a difficult, so I had to literally think on my feet. So I came up with these 5 words. The first one was manager. I spent 17 years with ITC, and then 8 years I was head of Asia for Lockheed Martin and Hughes. The second word I picked up was shopkeeper, because I founded Guardian Pharmacy, ran it as an entrepreneur for 14 years, built it into India's second largest chain. The third one was an author. So I've got 6 published books. I've got a new one coming up, which is How to Survive Failure and Come Out Stronger. And of course, I write a lot on, for Times of India, etc. The fourth one was CEO coach. And the fifth one was a storyteller. And, I run a series of very interesting video casts and podcasts. And of course, I am very often on CNN News 18 with either Zaka Jacob or Anand Narsimhan. I've been a member of the Young Presidents Organization for 27 years. I was recognized by the World Economic Forum. I've been on the board of Gavi, which is part of the United Nations, which is for vaccination, Center for Policy Research. I've taught at IIM Rohtak, which is where I met Professor Murthy. I have been a senior advisor to McKinsey. I sit on several boards and on several think tanks, because he's a person who's very much followed and appreciated by everyone, irrespective of age. And Warren Buffett really said, your brand had better be delivering something special, or it's not going to get the business. And this applies not just to your company's FMCG brand or your company's service, but most importantly, it applies to you as an individual. What is going to happen post the impact pandemic? And we'll talk a little bit about branding. One is the impact on each one of us. And sometimes I do think about it, that someone like me who's 64 years old has not really been impacted by the pandemic, because I've led a full life. I've done everything I had to, and my life hasn't changed at all, because I've been living in my house. And at my age, people have also said that it's safer that I stay at home. But for all you young people, it is very important to position yourselves in a manner that your brand, your name starts to get established, because ultimately it's only your name which will get you known. It will be important for you to stay relevant, and it will be important to build your networks. Everything else that you do, which you work for the world's largest multinational company, it will be an add-on to your brand. You win an award from the President of India, it will be an add-on to your brand, because ultimately your brand is the only thing that you own personally. So I'm going to take 5-7 minutes to talk about this one coin, because I've often been asked this question. When I say that you are a brand, most people say, how can I be a brand? I go and work for brands, but what I'm trying to tell you is that it's important you think about yourself as a brand. So very often, and I'm sure all of you would have discussed this amongst yourselves, with your parents, and the first thing that you always say is, they let my work speak for itself. And I've again, said this several times. This is not my saying, but many people have often said that if you do not blow your own trumpet, no one else will blow it for you. What this really means is that you need to be able to talk about the work that you are doing. So when an American boss told me this when I was 24 or 25 years old, after my business school working for ITC, I believed what he said, but only a few years later, I realized the next part of this statement, which was that if you don't blow your own trumpet, nobody will blow it for you. But don't blow your trumpet so loudly that it starts to hurt other people's ears. And that's an important lesson to remember. So let's talk about how each one of us is a brand. And a lot of you would be marketing people. I'm sure a lot of you would have done programs in marketing, or all of you may have done programs in marketing. But a brand is a story that is always being told. Remember that you are unique. You are as unique as your fingerprint or your retina scan or your gene sequence. And there is no one else in the world like you, and therefore you need to continuously invest in yourself. Remember that any successful brand, when you talk of a brand that is 100 years old, it is successful after 100 years because the various brand managers over the 100 years have consistently kept on investing in their brand, and you need to keep doing the same thing for your personal brand as well. Personal branding is about uncovering what is true and unique about yourself and letting everyone else who matters know about it. Really, what this means is that you need to keep understanding who you are, and you need to be able to talk about who you are and what you are contributing at your workplace, in the community, in your society, with your friend, and in your entire universe. And remember also that every successful person has painstakingly built their own brand name. It's a slow process. Nobody, just like you build a brand for your company, it takes a long time to build. Similarly, your name gradually keeps on getting stronger and stronger and stronger till you reach a stage where you are able to say that I am now an individual who's respected for various reasons that I have been able to contribute to society. Your brand is the essence of your own story. What is very important is for us to reach down deep within ourselves and pull out the authentic, the unique ourselves. Remember also that, each one of us, when we interact with people, we are constantly projecting something that we would like others to see us project about ourselves. And I've often told both my sons, they're both senior corporate people. One works for Visa in Singapore and the other one works for Procter & Gamble in the US. I've often told them over the last 20-25 years that when you are standing in front of the mirror every morning looking at yourself, if you can look at yourself in the eye and say, I did nothing wrong knowingly, I did not harm anyone knowingly, that's all the justification you need to give to anybody in your life. What I'm really saying is, as long as you are convinced that you are doing the right thing, you don't have to be worried what others tell you. What you do with your own brand name could be the difference between being very successful and not so successful. And like any brand, your brand value will increase and your brand value will decrease. And you just have to keep on investing, being persistent, being consistent, and keep on building your own brand. The value of your brand is what will give you the valuation that you may be seeking. And for you young people, valuation will initially be what kind of jobs you get, what kind of salaries you get, what kind of roles you are expected to be in. And as you start to get older, as you start to see more of the world, the expectations of your brand, the expectations of yourself will all start to change. Personal branding is about deciding to take an active role in managing the direction you want to take your life. You must be reasonably clear, reasonably early in your life, where you do want to go. A lot of us take time to understand, and that's not the point that you need to know today. If you're not very clear, it's something wrong. But as long as you are thinking through what you want to be, where you want to be, that is what is more important than the final destination. It's the journey of building your brand which is much more important. Your personal brand allows you to manage your life and helps you to stop depending on others for your credibility and your success. It helps you to make the most of what you have to offer, and your brand is built. Your brand is your reputation, which is built one story at a time through the experiences other people have of you. Remember that any brand, whether it's a brand for a product or a service or your own brand, it is only when others experience the brand that you start to understand, where do I stand with all of them. So that's all that I'm going to do. I've taken enough time. I'm happy to start answering questions that you may have, and ask me questions on any subject that you would like to. I do have your name, so I'm happy to start answering questions.
Thank you, sir. So to start off, as I was going through the presentation, one thing that came to my mind was that since we are the first batch of SME, so how can we connect this branding concept to SME? Because we are starting at a clean slate. And what are the things that we can do at this stage to ensure that SME comes out as a very good brand in the years ahead?
So remember that the first batch will always have a challenge in establishing who you are, what do you stand for, and therefore you are from IIT Jodhpur, which is a strong brand. You'll have to leverage off IIT Jodhpur very significantly. You'll have to take the biodata of all your students. That doesn't mean that all 40, 50 of you or whatever the number you have in your batch are all, when I say biodata, it means you're going to start putting the profile together. So many of your engineers, so this is your male-female ratio. This is the kind of achievements you've had in terms of your summer trainings. These are some of the results that you've had. And, compare yourself with some of the other institutions. How does IIT Jodhpur compare with some of the other IITs? And how do the business school here compare with the other business schools? So it is going to be a slow process. You will have to keep on chipping away, and it'll take years before you are able to say that you are at the level of an IIM Ahmedabad, which I'm saying is the premier institute. I mean, all institutes, all students, all professors will give the same amount of knowledge, give the same amount of expertise to every graduating batch. It is the perceptions that have been created in the minds of the people who will hire, which is going to determine how the placements will happen. So you have to keep investing in the companies who will hire you and future batches.
Thank you, sir. So it's interesting that you mentioned IIM Ahmedabad, which is considered the best B school in our country. But what I've always, one thing that has always come to my mind is, why is it that despite IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta being the best institutes, why is it that JBIMS Mumbai is called the CEO factory? What is the secret sauce of JBIMS, which produces so many CEOs?
So, my honest confession is that I don't know what the status of JBIMS now is, because I'm told now there are 6 or 7 institutes, and I was speaking to the director there last year, and I was telling him, I said, I'm a little surprised that as an alumni, you have never ever called me back to come and speak when I speak to so many other students. But I remember when I had joined, what attracted me to, and I didn't get IIM Ahmedabad, but I had Calcutta, Bangalore, Delhi, XLRI, and Bajaj. I mean, there's only 6 institutes when I was doing it in 1977. I chose to go to Bajaj for 2-3 reasons. Number one, while the other IIMs had 180 to 200 students in a class, Bajaj only had 35. Right. Number two, Bajaj was in the heart, and it continues to be in the heart of Mumbai, which meant that we were the only institute at that time where I think 70% of our professors and teachers were people from industry. So I learned marketing from the marketing director of Glaxo. He used to take the program. He's no more, but a guy called Tarun Gupta. I learned virtually every subject from people from industry. And that gave us a lot of first-hand knowledge. And I still tell a lot of management schools, you should be engaging and getting far more people from industry to come and teach you classes rather than keep them away, because this connect is very important. And I was telling my son, who's from London Business School and from Singapore Management University, I was telling him, you should go to Singapore and start teaching there, because management schools are also looking for your own alumni and for people from industry. And that connection will also build a relationship between industry and the business school, which will also answer part of your first question.
Thank you, sir. So I think some of the points that you mentioned about the batch size being small, 35, I think we as a batch of 70 have that advantage to an extent.
Absolutely. So remember also that a small batch, what it does is that, one, of course, the people outside are able to relate much better with a smaller batch. But a small batch is also very cohesive. All of you know one another. I'm sure you've got your own WhatsApp groups. I'm sure you're communicating with one another. And this is the time when you're all going to be supporting each other. This is not the time when you're going to be competing with one another. Right? Competition, between each one of you will come maybe 10, 12 years down the line, when if 3 of you are in the same company and then you're competing for the same job. But as of now, each one of you is growing and the market is big enough for all of you to grow. So therefore, you have to support one another.
That's a very nice message to go ahead with, sir. So I can see that some of the students also have questions. So there's a question from Shubham Rokle.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Shubham.
Yeah, hi. So my question would be, being such a successful entrepreneur for like almost 18 years now, what would be your most valuable piece of advice to the budding entrepreneurs among us and who are envisioning something of themselves, of their own? And the second question would be, you are you have a wide range of hobbies among you. So how did you manage to cope up with your work and all those hobbies that you are keeping up to till date?
Okay, so let me answer your first question. Just repeat your first question again. I will start thinking of your second question.
So what would be your most valuable piece of advice to the budding entrepreneurs?
So as far as the advice is, I've often been asked this question, Shubham, what is the right age to start become an entrepreneur? And I've said there's no right age. I founded Guardian when I was 46, right? And I founded the brand called You, which has now grown into probably the world's largest podcast platform when I was 61, right? So there's no age to do it. If you're passionate about something and you are determined that you can do something which you want to do, just go ahead and do it. I think that is what is most important as far as an entrepreneur is concerned. The second part of an entrepreneurial journey, that's a very lonely job. So either you try and figure out a way to get someone who is able to be a partner with you, or you figure out a way to have a team of people who are working with you, who you can trust and repose complete faith in, because otherwise being alone as an entrepreneur is a very tough job. And third one, as for an entrepreneur, is that just make sure you have sufficient money. You don't need to have very deep pockets. Bootstrap your startup in a manner that you don't burn too much cash, and don't be in a hurry to say that what will be my valuation, because if you've got a strong startup, a strong business model, the valuation will follow. But if you start by saying I want valuation, that is highly unlikely that your business model will succeed. And tell me the second one again now. Second question.
So how did you manage to cope up with all your hobbies and your work?
Oh, so I lead a very disciplined life. I mean, I'm up at 4 every morning, but I sleep at 9:30. And by the time people are surfacing, I would have already got 4.5 hours of work done, and I stop working at 7. And I do have a very, very clear calendar which I follow very carefully. I play the flute, so I make sure that I get my flute hour lessons 4 or 5 times a week. I play golf, so I manage to get my time for golf also. I write. So I think it's more a mindset that we don't have time. If you are determined to do something, you will find the time to do it, and you will enjoy doing everything. So there is more than enough time to do as many things as you want to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So as Shubham asked the question on hobbies, and you mentioned that you're interested in playing golf and the flute and writing. So which out of the 3 do you like the best, if you had to rank them in order of preference?
They're all very different. I mean, golf I play because I've managed to get to meet a lot of good friends and I enjoy the game. But golf is a very long game. It's a 6.5 hours game. So I normally play that on a Thursday afternoon and a Sunday morning. My flute I enjoy because I used to play it when I was young, 21, 22, 23. And then, I got caught up in my work. So I didn't play it at all for about 34, 35 years. And only 2 years ago, I found a teacher in Delhi, and now I play. So I really enjoy playing the flute. And as far as writing is concerned, I write. There are times when I don't write at all, but when I'm in the frame of writing, then there are days when I wake up at 2:30 in the morning, and by the time my wife wakes up at 6 o'clock, I would have finished 2,500, 3,000 words. So, it's just balancing all of them. I enjoy all of them equally.
Okay, sir. That was. I think that was a very diplomatic answer.
Okay.
Vani, just to add on, and Mr. Garg, just inquisitive to know what Shubham had asked. So the schedule that you follow, which is getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, pushing out by 9, is it something that you started off, when you were sort of post your MBA, or this is something that you have inculcated over a period of time?
No, so I've always been an early riser. Always been. So from the time I think I was in college, I used to wake up at 5:15. That's a routine that I've always had. My best work gets done in the morning when I'm absolutely fresh. But over the last 10, 12 years, one discipline I have brought into my life, and I guess I can afford to do it now, is that I put my phone in a different room, which is my study, at 7 p.m. I don't look at my phone after 7 p.m. And if someone has to call me urgently, either they would call on my wife's phone, which is family will call, or they will call on the landline, which no one has except family. So I don't take any messages. I don't take any after 7 p.m. because that's my own time when I want to mindlessly sit and watch some web series or something like that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
So
you.
we can take the next question from Ankit.
Hello, sir. So
Yeah.
I would like to know how was your first episode of the podcast, The Brand Called You, and how the person reacted or was influenced when you called him or her a brand.
I didn't understand the question. What was my first episode for the brand called you?
Yeah, and how the person reacted when you called him or her a brand.
Okay. No, let me tell you about why I started this podcast series. I for a long time believed that in every country in the world, there are only 15, 20 people who are spoken about all the time. When in fact, there are thousands of amazing stories that need to be told. So I said, let me start, telling stories of people who I know are achieving a lot, but who the press doesn't talk about much, and who people don't necessarily talk about too much because there are much bigger names to talk about. So the first person was a very dear friend of mine called Sandeep Tyagi. He's a very major hedge fund manager in New York. I told him, I said, Sandeep, I'm going to be experimenting with you. You'll be my first guinea pig. So you please come. I want to experiment with you. And he very sweetly came. and I think his episode, which was the first one that we did, is probably been viewed maybe between 7 to 10,000 times. So I think there are very interesting guests who are coming. This is something I'm very clear. I keep only 3 days a week when I do my recordings, which is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. I don't do it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because I have so many other things that I do. And it's an amazing opportunity for me to talk to and listen to many people. Today, by next Tuesday, which is when I'm going to stop in December, then start again in January, I would have finished over 450 recordings from incredible people from around the world. And it's just a way that this is starting to now snowball, because people are now writing to me from all over the world saying, how do we get onto your platform? So my whole objective, this has never been started with the objective of monetizing it, but my whole objective is to say that if two of you are sitting at a coffee shop somewhere and talking very intensely about some particular subject, and the two people say, listen, let's do a 7-minute or 8-minute or 10-minute recording on our phone and send it off to the brand called you, and it'll go onto a platform. Very similar to what from a trivial or a perspective TikTok used to do or does, where it was 15-20 seconds. Here I'm saying that let's start emanating or disseminating knowledge from everyone who wants to be able to share.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Alankrita.
Good afternoon, sir. It was nice interacting with you. My question is regarding your book, The Brand Called You, that is the personal branding. So I wanted to know, how did you conceptualize the book, and is there any incident that triggered you in writing such a book and made people understand the importance of personal branding?
So this again comes from what I just mentioned, that in the world, very, very few people ever think about their own name. And I've told this to many people, that when I used to take my card of ITC as managing director of ITC Global Singapore, and people would see me, I would just assume that they were seeing me because it was me. They were not seeing me because it was me. They were seeing me because it was the ITC name on my card that was opening the doors for me. So when I wrote my first book, The Buck Stops Here, I was talking to, and I had Omar Abdullah launch it for me. Omar was Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, but Omar was also a young management trainee with me in ITC. So when I sent him a message, I said, Omar, will you come and launch my book? He says, I'll fly down only for this book. So we had a very high profile launch, etc. And then I didn't get the coverage that I had thought I would get. So I asked a very senior journalist, why is my book not getting covered? And he told me something, and I was 10 years, I was 54 years old at that time. And I thought I had arrived, and and he told me, he says, Ashutosh, who is Ashutosh Garg? They know Ashutosh Garg, ITC Limited. They know Ashutosh Garg, Lockheed Martin. They know Ashutosh Garg, Hughes. They know Ashutosh Garg, Guardian. But who is Ashutosh Garg? And that is when I suddenly realized that my own name was the only thing I owned. Otherwise, everything was Ashutosh Garg, ITC, Ashutosh Garg, so-and-so, Ashutosh Garg, so-and-so. And that's when I started to say that I need to invest in my own name and build my own name as a brand. Second, you would also, as you go into the corporate world, you'll realize that your brand is something which is getting impacted. So I'm sure all of you, or some of you know about Tiger Woods, the golfer, right? The world #1 golfer, and how he destroyed himself because of one aberration in his personal life, right? And completely destroyed, and he fell out of favor with everybody. And you can think of so many instances of how easy it is to destroy our own names. So the whole purpose of The Brand Called You is to keep on reinforcing in multiple chapters how important it is, and how you can keep on checking what you are doing wrong and what can be done to make sure that your brand remains #1. Remember also that when I was growing up, the world was not an interconnected world. It wasn't as if, everybody knew everything that is going on in my life. Today with digital media, everything is not only just interconnected, but nothing can be deleted. It will always exist on some computer somewhere on the world, around the world. And therefore, everything wrong that you do, for all the people who know finance, will be a debit against your name. And for all the positives that you are doing, will be a credit against your name. You have to make sure that your credits against your name are much higher than the debits against your name.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering the question.
Thank you, sir. That was a very interesting way to put it. I'm sure we'll all remember this. The next question is from Ashirbad.
Hello, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Sir, you have been working for so many years and also interacting with so many peoples of diverse background. And many of them are very, very successful. And I think many of them also being unsuccessful. I want to know what are some common traits of successful people and what are some common traits of unsuccessful people.
So my first comment to you is that there is nobody who's unsuccessful. To me, there is successful and the others are the not so successful, because maybe they haven't yet realized their potential, right? So I would not say there's anybody who's unsuccessful in my life, right? Now, what the words I'm going to use are probably something you've heard from your parents. Successful people just make sure that they work hard. Most important, they meet their commitments. So if I say to you that, Ashirbad, I will deliver this to you on this particular date, and if I don't deliver, that is something that I think is not a good process to follow, a good practice to follow. And if I keep on doing this repeatedly, you will lose faith in what I commit to you, right? So therefore, someone who's successful, and you'll read, hundreds and thousands of articles. I mean, someone says people who work late into the night are very successful, and you'll have a dozen people who can be given. Some people say if you wake up early in the morning, you're successful. I've failed far too many times. So there is nothing like what is successful. I just think success is a state of your mind, and you are constantly changing the goalpost as you get older and as your initial needs start to get met. So as I mentioned to you, all you young people, the first success will be what is the kind of job that you will get. If someone gets 10x and someone gets 5x, does not mean the person who got 10x is more successful than the person who got 5x, right? So therefore, I think that's something which you need to have in your own perspective. You will start working, someone will buy a house in a very high-end building, someone may not buy that. Doesn't mean that the person who's got the high-end building is a very successful person, right? So it's entirely a case of, I mean, to me now, but not now, 10 years ago, I thought I would be successful if both my sons settled down very, very well, and now they're very well settled, right? And I keep telling them, why don't you have a child so that I can become a grandfather? And they're not listening to me. So am I unsuccessful as a grandfather? Probably. So I don't think you should look at life at all as successful or unsuccessful. There are a series of milestones. Take life in what I call bite-sized milestones. Don't say that I'm going to be the chairman of the company, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Look at what goals you want to have, achieve those goals, and you're successful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the perspective.
So as Ashirbad raised the point of being successful and not successful, and you being an entrepreneur yourself. So how should one realize or gauge when it is that the venture that I started off with, it's not working out? And when should I stop and move towards something else, probably go back to corporate or focus on something else? So how do you decide that this is the time?
The simplest is, if you've run out of money. I mean, that is the first thing that, is the test that is your business that you have started. Is it working? If it is not working, nobody's giving you more money. But remember that any business, unless it's in the social sector, the purpose of any business is to make money, is to make a profit. And if you are consistently not going to make a profit, then at some stage, the people who are funding you will turn off the tap. And when they turn off the tap, that is when it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be able to continue to do something. All of you are very young. You can afford to take your chances, because if something doesn't work, that's not the end of the world. There are many, many opportunities. And I've often said this, my grandfather, worked for the government. My mother's father was an ICS officer, worked for the government. They worked for the government. When they retired, when he retired, he didn't know what to do. He had never ever thought that there was anything else he could do in his life. So he retired, I think, at 58. At 61, he died because he had never ever planned anything like that. My father was a very, very successful army officer, highly decorated, Ati Vishish Seva Medal and a Kirti Chakra. But he did many, many more things. I've been fortunate to do many other things. But for all of you, I've said that the world is so open. The world is, as they say, your oyster. Each one of you can afford to say that I will be in the corporate world for 5 years. Then you say, after that, I want to be an entrepreneur. Then someone will say that I want to go and act in a movie. You can do that. Then someone can say that I want to be a musician. Now, our families are financially stronger than they were when I was growing up. 2, the world today is willing to accept. So if today you go and tell your employer that I want a sabbatical for 1 year, I don't think it will be taken against you. But when I was growing up, I only changed job 3 times. I would finish working at 5 p.m. in the evening and start next morning at 9 a.m. Right? So the entire way society is thinking has changed, and you are at a fantastic time to be able to do exactly what you want to do.
Thank you, sir. So we can take another question from Keshav Agrawal.
Sure.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for taking your time out, sir. So, sir, I went through your profile on LinkedIn and saw that you have done some courses from Harvard University, some religious courses. So I just was interested to know the story behind that, sir.
Okay. So that really started in the lockdown period. I did 2 things in the lockdown period. One was I finished a new book on failure, and that's gone to Bloomsbury for publication. It'll be out on the I think in the first week of March. And then someone sent me this an email saying that there is Harvard runs a program which is now across all universities called EDX, whatever EDX stands for, I don't know. And they sent me this link on Hinduism. So I said, I wanted to learn about Hinduism. So I went to the Harvard program, and because it was the pandemic and lockdown, I was being, they were offering very, very low prices. So I said, let me test it out. So it was just $49 for an 8-day program. So I did that program. And then as I started to read more about what was happening in that course, there was a course on a 9-day program on Islam. So I wanted to understand what is Islam, right? So I did the 9-day program on Islam. Then I found that whole program had 6 modules. So there was Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, Judaism, and Buddhism. So then an 8-month program, I finished and I passed all my tests in a period of, I think, about 8 weeks, because it was just so fascinating, So that's the background of. And then, someone said, you must put it on your profile. I said, I've never been to Harvard, but this is a good way to at least have Harvard somewhere in my profile. So I just put it in my profile. So it was more as a learning exercise, nothing else.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So the next question is from Zafar.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, Zafar.
Sir, you have worked as a CEO coach. So I was just looking for it, and I found that most of the CEOs, even Larry Page and others, have used CEO coaches at some point in their life. Just I wanted to know what exactly a coach does in the life of a CEO, how they train them. I wanted to have some perspective over it.
Let me ask you a question with a question.
Sure, sir.
Who are the top sportsmen that you can think of in cricket or in tennis or anything else?
So in football, I can think of
Any?
Messi.
Okay.
Messi.
So give me any 2-3 names and then think, do they have a coach or not?
Yes, all of them have, sir. It's
All of them have a
Messi, it's
coach.
Ronaldo, it's
Similarly, as far as the CEO is concerned, irrespective of how large the business may be, a CEO always needs someone who he or she can speak to about the innermost challenges that everyone is going through. So, Zafar, remember that if you become the CEO of a very, very large corporation, does not mean that now you don't have your own doubts, or does not mean that you don't have your own insecurities, or you don't have your own questions, or you don't stumble. We are all human beings. So the role of a coach for a CEO is really someone who establishes a trust between the CEO and the coach, and they are able to talk to one another. So I don't take more than 4 CEOs at a time. 2 of them are very, very large billion-dollar company CEOs, and my interaction with them is primarily on matters of, I've got a problem with my CFO. What I don't know what to do. He can't. Or I've got a serious problem with my board of directors. I don't know what to do, right? Or I've got a problem going on with my child who's in university somewhere. I don't know what to do. Now, a coach doesn't give you answers. The role of a coach is not to give you an answer, but the role of a coach is to keep asking you questions, because it is always believed that all of us have the answers to our own problems within ourselves. Where a coach helps me is to say that, have you thought of it like that? And that helps me to think through and realize there are many other options that I can take to be able to answer my dilemma.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Anjana.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Anjana.
Sir, we see you as a successful person. You're a person with multiple talents. But sir, is there anything in your life which you consider as your failure? And if something like that is there, what impact did it create on you? How did you respond to that?
If I start talking of failures, you'll have to give me 3 more hours on this conference, But see, we all fail. And I'm glad you asked me this question, because my new book on failure basically is on the hypothesis that as Indian parents, I would say, and certainly South Asia and maybe Asia, we don't teach children that it's okay to fail. We are always told, come first in class, be at the front of the queue, and that begins to manifest itself in our behavior patterns. So how many times have you seen in Jodhpur or whichever city you come from, at a traffic light, 8 cars will come together and at a traffic light when there are only 3 lanes and everyone's trying to go first, right? Why does this happen? You get off in an aircraft which is full of Indians, and I'm not saying anything against Indians. I'm as Indian as anyone else. But if you're sitting in the last row, the person sitting in the last row wants to get out first, knowing fully well that there is only one door you can get out of, right? And it's just our mindset that I must come out first, because I've not been told, sit back, relax, and there is no reason for you to worry. Failure is something which is a part of our lives. So there have been many, many failures. I mean, if you read my books, my first book, I talk about the time when I had this major confrontation with the chairman of ITC when I was managing director of the company. And, I thought that was a failure. Should I have had a big fight in an open hall with 100 people sitting there? My answer is no. But at that time, I was 36 years old and aggressive, etc. And that is when I decided I had to leave ITC at that time, right? So failure will keep coming in our life all the time. We just have to be sure that we don't let it affect our health, and we don't do anything silly, like the chairman of Cafe Coffee Day did, VG Siddharth. I used to know him. I wrote an article. I was on television also saying that, failure is a part of our lives, but that does not mean that, we cannot take it in our stride, because that's what life is all about. We will keep on failing. We will keep on winning.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm
So,
sorry, I can't hear the question.
Yes, sir. So what I'm saying is that Anjana's question was on failure. So you just mentioned that we should be more, we should have acceptance for our failures.
Yeah. No, I answered her question. I thought someone else asked me a question in between. So, okay.
No, sir. No, sir. That was just some disturbance in the background.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, not talking about failure, is there anything that you would like to change if you were given a chance to redo your professional career? Is there anything that you would want to have different?
Well, when I used to go through an appraisal, when I used to work for companies, the only thing that was always a negative that was always put in my appraisals was that I used to trust people too easily, too quickly, right? And that is something, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I mean, I still don't think it's wrong, but I know that I've been let down far too many times by many people. So I guess if the one thing that I would probably want to change is not to place blind trust, but to do my due diligence about any individual before I repose 100% faith and just open my heart out. I would say that's the only thing I would probably change.
Okay, sir. Thank you for answering that, sir. So the next question is from Arunika.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, Arunika.
And I thought the session was very insightful. So while you were answering Ashirvad's question, you said make commitments. And that is where my question is. My father always says me that human beings have the weakest relationship is with their words. Now I make a commitment. How do I honor it? The ways to honor it. What kind of commitment I should go ahead with. So that is one thing I would say. And I also believe that a person is of virtue when he can keep up with his words. So that's my question.
So, I would completely agree with what your father told you. I mean, let me tell you an interesting instance. I used to travel to China very often in my aerospace days. I must have been to China 60, 70 times in the last 15, 18 years. And I often asked American friends, and this happened twice actually. I said, what is the difference between an Indian businessman or an Indian professional and a Chinese businessman or a Chinese professional? And what they said to me was fascinating. They said, it is very difficult to get a Chinese to say yes, and it is very difficult for an Indian to say no. So if you talk to an Indian anywhere in the world, they will all know Prime Minister Modi, or they'll say, I can figure out a way to get to them. There is this horrible word which has come into our lexicon, which is jugaad. And I think it's a terrible word because we use that for everything to explain away all our weaknesses. I think it's a horrible word. What is most important for us is that if we make a commitment, we have to stick to it. Now, if we are going to be able to, and if we are not able to do it, we should have the courage to say no. And I find Indian management, Indian entrepreneurs, they do not ever say no. The answer is ho jayega, or I'll figure out a way to get it done. And then when it gets done, it is either shoddy, or it is done incorrectly, or it doesn't get done at all. And then we start finding excuses. So, I don't know if I should keep advising you, but do remember that it is very easy for us to say no. It's only in our mind that if I say no, what will the other person think? If you learn to say no, you will never make a wrong commitment, because then you will say, I won't do it, I can't do it. So do tell your dad that I completely agree with him.
Sure, sir, I will. Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
So
you.
the next question is from Somnath.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Sobna.
Sir, hi, sir. Thank you for sharing such thoughts, sir. So my question like pertains to more of a entrepreneurship side. So my question is that while when we have an idea and we are looking for investments, so investors generally want to see some traction, like how much you have done, if there is any sales or not. But if the idea requires bigger investment, like which I can individually or two or three of my friends can't do it, so how can we convince the investors, like by showing them some value so that they can invest on the idea rather than seeing on the traction? So like some product base if you make a,
So I
in
would
that
I
case.
would I would turn the question around to you, and I would say that if you had 10,000 rupees in your pocket, and a friend of yours came and said that, listen, why don't you put 3,000 rupees of your money into a project that I have? Will you not ask a lot of questions? Because, and this is, remember, it's your own money. When it is a private equity or an angel investor, in the case of an angel investor, it is their own money. But in the private equity, it's not their own money. They are all employees of the fund. So, what does the private equity guy look for, or what does an investor look for? If you are not convinced about your own idea, and if you're not able to convince me as an investor that I think this is a brilliant idea, and then expect me to make an investment in your company, then I think your expectation is probably unreasonable. And but if the best thing about any startup is that you have to be able to show proof of concept, that if you've got something which you are doing, does it really work? And once you've established proof of concept, then you say, can you scale it up? Now, if you go and say that my proof of concept is established and I'm now making 1 lakh rupees every month, and I have the capability of taking it to 100 crores every month, to take it from 1 lakh to 100 crores, I need money, then it's a different story altogether for an investor. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Nitish.
Okay.
So I suppose he is facing some network issues.
Okay.
So we can take Pawan's question.
Sure.
So I think he has also dropped off due to network issues.
Yeah.
So we can take one last question from. Okay, Ankit also has a question. Ankit, we can take it after Anaga's question.
Good evening, sir.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah.
Sir, thank you for the session. Sir, I came to know that you love Indian classical music. So, which genre do you like the most? The Carnatic music or the Hindustani?
No, so I enjoy listening to Hindustani classical North India, and that's also because I learned several of those rags on my flute. And when I was growing up, ITC is a very big sponsor of music, and ITC has what's called a Sangeet Research Academy in Calcutta. So for a little time I was made responsible for handling the finances of the Sangeet Research Academy, which has got me introduced to it. So I enjoy listening to North Indian classical. I don't know much about Carnatic music. Once in a while I listen to it, but I don't know enough about it.
And also there is one more question, sir. Sir, whom do you admire the most in the North Indian classical music?
I beg your pardon? I didn't understand.
Whom do you admire most in the North Indian classical music?
I guess, I listen to a lot of people. I listen to, a lot of people, but, the flute players are always I'm a little more biased to them because I enjoy that instrument also.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that were all the questions that we had.
Great.
I would now request Anuj sir to share a few words.
All right. Thank you so much, Vanya. Thank you so much to all the students, specifically to Mr. Garg. Thank you so much. It was again a pleasure hosting you. I've been viewing and following your video casts over LinkedIn, and I think then they take you to YouTube the moment you click on them. And I think it's just fascinating to see you exactly, looking at you with the exact background, at the background that you have, it's exactly the same. So I think it's very fascinating for me. What I would also request is whenever things are back to normal, on behalf of the students, of all the faculty members, we would love to host you at SME IIT Jodhpur along with your family. It's a beautiful campus that we have. Thank you so much for taking out time from your schedule to interact with our students. And if Professor Venkatesh is there, I would like him to say a few words, and I would also like to thank him, for sharing your contacts and getting you to speak to our students.
Thank you very much, and lots of success to each one of you. I'm sure things will go really well for whatever you're doing. There's Professor Murthy. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so, thank you, Mr. Garg. In fact, it has been so fascinating and so enlightening to listen to you after a long time. It's been quite some time since
yes, it's been a long time.
You. Yeah, I remember the last session that you delivered to students at IIM Jodhpur in the entrepreneur in 2018. Yeah, that's
probably yes. Yes.
And then we had repeated interactions amongst us.
Correct.
And then Ram was telling about the conversation that you and Ram were about to have.
Yes. So I think you must all listen to Ram Subramaniam. He's a PhD. He has been teaching at Stanford. He and I were brought on by Professor Murthy on the board of the incubator that IIM Rohtak was going to set up. So I just interviewed Ram Subramaniam. He's finished his PhD, and he's a fascinating individual. So thank you again.
So we are kind of indeed. Thank you.
No, you were saying something?
Yeah, Ram is worked with some of our engineering students who have some business ideas and plans and so on. So we are trying to see if those ideas can be taken further.
Wonderful.
And we will keep bothering you. In fact, we will want to have a little longer engaged students, and they probably would be more benefited from your entrepreneurial experience.
Sure. Happy.
And yes, in fact, I must tell all my students, Mr. Garg has been one of the finest entrepreneurs in the country, and has been someone who founded and made it to one of the successful retail pharmaceuticals in the country. And probably there is so much more to learn on the entrepreneurship side. And I know I learned so many intricacies of entrepreneurship over the last 6 years. We know 6 years. And we've together I've worked with several entrepreneurs at IIM Rohtak. I'm sure I could request him anytime.
Thank you.
Ask help our students to grow their enterprises if any of them are interested.
Thank you very much
so much for coming and just.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time and speaking to us. This was a very engaging session, and I'm sure all of us had a lot of learnings to take from this session. And if you do get the chance, so please come to our campus and visit us. We would soon be joining campus in batches, of course, as the pandemic is going on. But as things get back to normal, we would love to host you.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Lots of success in your placements.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Thank you so much, students. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Venkatesh. I think Ashutosh was simply, he was too good.
Yeah, indeed.